What's up, guys, and welcome back to another podcast episode here at the Team Member Perspective. My name is Coulter. I'm your host, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive into word choice, tonality, verbal pacing, pausing, and how all of that affects your ability to influence. But I wanted to do that to demonstrate a few points. Just help us understand a little bit more about our communication and how the way that we communicate with people directly affects our ability to influence people. And I believe, guys, that in a lot of ways, sales is communication, right? If we are not able to communicate effectively and in a way that resonates with people and in a way that doesn't cause them to want to close off to us rather than open up, in a way that doesn't cause them to want to just get you off the phone, but instead engage with you, if we're not able to communicate very well, we're probably not going to be selling a lot of policies. I believe that. And so today I want to talk and do kind of a deep dive into communication and specifically word choice and tonality and the way that we're saying the words. Because I think all of this matters. You know, as I did that intro, first and foremost, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, were like, holy cow, I can't even follow what you're saying. You're speaking so fast, dude. And I did that on purpose because when we speak so fast, people have a hard time following what we're saying or internalizing what we're saying. And so a lot of times they'll stay surface level with us. But when we slow down and we learn the skill of verbal pacing and learn how that helps us in our ability to influence, people start to actually engage with us. They start to emotionally open up. They can actually follow us. Okay, so first and foremost, verbal pacing. It's really easy when we might be nervous, we might be a little excited, we recognize an opportunity to pivot out on the phones. It's really easy to allow those emotions, that excitement, that nervousness to cause us to kind of just talk really fast. And I want you to start to be aware of that. And because I believe that the first step of any sort of self-improvement in our communication is self-awareness. But start to be aware of the way that you're communicating with people and verbally pacing things out. And what I mean by that is utilize pauses. Maybe pauses that aren't really normal, that aren't generic, that are in certain areas that they shouldn't maybe be in. And it's almost in ways it's are you stuttering or are you just pausing, right? We want the customer to stay engaged with us. And so when we verbally pace things out, and sometimes we might speak a little bit faster, but then we slow down when there's something that might be really important, it helps us communicate in a more effective way. Verbally pacing things out is important, and that's a skill that you can develop. This is all learnable stuff, but develop the awareness that the rate at which you speak should change a little bit, right? Don't always speak at the same pace all the time, but maybe you can speed up a little bit and then slow down. And as you can learn to verbally pace and develop that skill, your ability to influence will go up. You'll be able to become more influential in your communication. Okay, so verbally pacing things is very important. And the whole idea, guys, is to keep people engaged. Because when things even rate, if we talk about this for a minute, if I'm just sitting here and I'm talking like this and my rate is the same, even though if I can have a higher tone or if I can go lower tone, if my rate is the same and all I'm doing is the same rate, it's very easy for the brain to just want to disengage because it's almost predictable, and you see what I'm saying. And so verbally pacing things out where you can insert some pauses and then maybe you can speak up a little bit faster around things, but then you can slow down. All of that helps the brain to stay engaged rather than try to get off the phone and disengage, right? And so verbal pace things out. Pay attention to that. Develop an awareness around that because that's going to help you. Now, the next thing is the tonality, right? The tonality that we're using is important. Our tone is how our customer interprets our intention. So I want you to pay attention to your tone. And I think in your sales conversations, to keep people engaged, don't stay with the same monotone dialogue the whole time, right? Almost be animated in certain areas. And I think your tone, your facial expressions and your body language can kind of help you with your tonality, because it's almost if you can use your facial expressions, it's you can all of a sudden insert this energy into your words, into your voice. But then also if you've got these other facial expressions. They're remote control to your tone, your facial expressions, and your body language. Okay. Like try to be really excited about something and say something that's really exciting, but with kind of a flat face and no body language, right? Pay attention to your tonality. And in your sales conversations, adopt a curious tone, a confused tone as you're going in your sales conversations, because it's very helpful, okay? So the tonality is very important. I think, don't get too lost into different types of tonality right now. Just become aware of your tonality and what that's communicating to your people. And I think just try to not have the same tone throughout your whole conversation with people. Like mix up your tone. And I think as you develop that awareness and just have that intention of like, I'm going to mix up my tone, I think you'll start to develop a skill around what tones to use and when, if that makes sense. Okay. So verbally pacing things out, tonality, those all matter in our communication. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is our word choice. The words that we use matter. I believe that. Words have feeling. Words have emotion. And to demonstrate that, we're going to play a quick game. We did this with our group, and I thought it was very interesting to just kind of see different responses. So I want you to think about, with each of these words, I'm going to say 4 words. And when I say a word, I want you to think about how you feel. I want you to think about the emotion that comes to you, that you feel from that word. And I also want you to just almost like describe that emotion or describe what other words come to mind when you hear this word, because it's going to help you understand that behind every word is a feeling, is an emotion, and our beliefs, right, that we have about these words, whether we realize it or not. And so the first word is this, cells. So when you hear the word cells, if you had to label it with an emotion, what would that emotion be? In doing this with our group of 400 plus team members, I saw the chat and people threw in, this emotion they're feeling and different words that explained what this word felt like or how they interpret it and their beliefs about this word, right? And it was very interesting when I said cells, it's like the first 20 that came in were very negative, pushy, slimy, fear. All these different negative words that are describing cells and how they feel about cells. But then as more answers started to fill in, some other people were more positive with it. Helping, serving, solving problems, right? Feels good. And so that was interesting. Here's the next word, confidence. What do you think about when you hear the word confidence? For me, I can see a couple different ways that we can view this is maybe certainty, maybe belief, maybe powerful, maybe, influential, right? Like those are some words that we can describe confidence as, but some of us might be thinking like, if you look at someone that's overly confident, you can maybe think like, for lack of a better word here, like douche, right? Like arrogant, right? The next word is money. What do you feel when you hear the word money? Scarcity, stress, anxiety, evil, or abundance, a tool, helping people, right? Like, what do you feel when you hear the word money? And the last one is insurance. How do you feel? What's the emotion that you have towards insurance? Is it scam? Is it stupid? Is it obligation? Or is it to make whole? Or helping? Or money, right? Like, what is it that you felt? How would you describe what that word feels like to you? Okay. And so, my hope is that as we went through those different words, and as you really thought about like what these words feel like and almost like how you would describe them and what they mean, my hope is that you kind of had an aha moment that's like, oh my gosh, like the words that we use actually do matter. And maybe you knew that, but as I did this little exercise with our group, it was very interesting to see that behind every word, there's an emotion for people. And we don't get to decide what that emotion is for different people. It's their past, their experience, and what they believe about that word that dictates how they feel. Okay. And so the words that we choose to use in our sales conversations matter. I like to think of myself as a wordsmith, very intentional with my words because the words that we use matter. Okay. And so here are some words in insurance that I think maybe we can avoid, and we'll explain why, but other ways, like different words that we can use in place of them. Okay. So the first one is, if you are in a position where you're trying to sell life insurance, I would try to avoid the words life insurance initially in your pivoting. Instead of saying life insurance, maybe replace that with like benefit or coverage. And you might be wondering like, well, why? Why would I want to not say the words life insurance? Like, that's kind of interesting. I'm trying to sell them life insurance. I don't want to be sneaky. I don't want to be salesy. Like, why would I avoid the word life insurance? Here's the thing is like life insurance really just is a trigger word. And if you're new to the business, go out and pivot to 10 people today and just ask them about their life insurance. I guarantee you a good majority of them are going to give you an objection. And they're going to tell you they have it through work. They don't need it, that they're not going to die. Whatever that objection, you're going to get an objection because people have preconceived beliefs about life insurance. They have maybe some emotional baggage or maybe some resistance with that word. Maybe they had a parent that had a life policy that canceled on them and their rates went up really high. And it's like, oh, I'm never going to have life insurance again. Or maybe they're thinking life insurance, they've got in their mind, they're like, I've got it through work. I just talked to HR. We're good there. And maybe it's like life insurance. Oh, that's for old people. That's not for me, right? So instead of saying life insurance and setting yourself up for these objections that in my experience completely stop the conversation, try to maybe, use the words benefit or coverage. Stop leading with life insurance and maybe start leading with protection. Lead with protection, not the product, right? So instead of, do you have life insurance? Maybe it's something like, I was reviewing your policies and noticed a possible gap in your coverage. Can I share something with you? Right? Like we're not leading with the product. We're leading almost with like the possible problem. Okay. Instead of saying we should talk about life insurance, maybe instead say, ask a thought-provoking question like, if something were to happen to you like yesterday, what would that look like today for your family? Maybe instead of saying you need life insurance, maybe it's connect with them on what they already care about or what they already know you for, right? Like connect the dots a little bit and say, you know what? Like we protect your car and home. Does it make sense to protect your family in that same way? So instead of like leading with the product and talking about life insurance in our pivoting, lead with what it does for people too, right? Not what it is. So instead of saying like, we have great life insurance options, maybe instead say like, we help families set up a plan so they never have to rely on like a GoFundMe if something unexpected happens. Okay. Maybe you could lead in with stories instead of saying you need to get life insurance. Maybe say like, look, I just had a client kind of just like you that thought they had plenty of coverage, but when we actually ran the numbers, they realized that they didn't. Would you be open to taking a quick look at that together, right? And so instead of saying life insurance, like use different words, lead in to the conversation with the problem, not the product, okay? And simply like if you want to just find a word that you can use in place of life insurance, just use benefit or coverage. It's general enough that causes curiosity, causes people to want to engage without those preconceived beliefs or emotional baggage or resistance that they might have when they hear the words life insurance. Okay. The next word is follow-up. Don't say follow-up. I'm just calling to follow up with you. You might as well call and say, I'm just calling to sell you, right? Instead, maybe use, I'm just getting back to you. Another one is disability. Stop saying disability in your conversations if you sell a disability product. Because I don't know about you, but when I hear the word disability, what comes to my mind is, well, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to become disabled. And I think of almost like the handicap sign, the wheelchair, right? The blue handicap sign. And there's just not a lot of connection there that I have with that word. And I think that I will never become disabled, right? That's not going to happen to me. So instead of saying disability, maybe say sick or hurt. I can relate much more. I've been sick in my life. I've been hurt in my life, but I've never been disabled. Okay. Now, when you're talking about price and you're quoting people the price, instead of saying like your bill will go up or it's this much more, like take that out of your language. We don't want this to become a price conversation. But sometimes we set it up that way and we're like, oh, I don't know why I can't sell all these policies. Well, it's like all of that work that you did in selling people kind of just goes out the window in their minds when they hear, oh, my price is going up. I'm going to have to pay more for this. No one wants to pay more for their insurance. Okay. And so instead of that, instead of saying your bill will go up or it's going to be this much more, maybe just say, well, if we did this, your bill would go to X. Just tell them what their bill goes to. Or maybe, hey, if we did this, your bill goes from X to Y, right? And so the words that we use matter, and sometimes just removing some of the words makes all the difference. Okay, and then the last one is, I guess two more, is need. Stop telling people what they need. No one likes to be told what they need to do, what they need to have, what they should be doing, right? Stop doing that. Instead, use want. Like, what would you want this to do? Would you want this to pay off your car? Would you want this to pay off your home? Okay. Switch from and transition and move from a needs-based conversation, telling people that they need things, to a wants conversation. A lot happens there. And then the last one is, when we're talking about bigger policies, okay, like permanent life insurance or, bigger premium policies, instead of saying like pay and afford, because like pay and afford, like that just kind of goes in my mind to like expense, like this is an expense for me, which we all know that permanent life insurance really isn't an expense. It's more of like an asset or an investment because of the features of it, right? What it can do. But if you're saying afford and pay, it's communicating to the customer that this is an expense, right? Just like their other insurance, but it's really not. And so one tweak is, maybe it's instead of pay or afford, it's like set aside or contribute, right? So guys, the words that we use matter. Behind every word, there is some sort of feeling, emotion, interpretation that we don't get to decide for our customers. So let's be intentional. Let's develop an awareness around the words that we're using and understand that the way that we're saying these words in our verbal pacing, in our tonality, in emphasis, in pausing, all of that matters and directly affects our ability to influence. So if you want to elevate your conversations like as soon as today, step one, develop an awareness around the words that you're using and the way that you're saying your words. And then step two, what will happen is your brain's going to go to work. Your brain's going to start to recognize in your conversations like, oh, that word felt a little weird and that word triggered them to do this. Let's maybe use a different word next time. And all of a sudden, as you have all these experiences and you've got this on your mind about word choice and tonality and how that affects your communication, your ability to influence, your brain will find areas for you to improve and your conversations will elevate. And when your conversations elevate and you become better at becoming a master communicator, right? You learn to communicate and you learn the science and the art behind it, you will sell more. There's no doubt in my mind. I believe that the success that I've had in sales has been directly in proportion to my ability to communicate. As I've studied communication, as I've studied human behavior and all of these different things, and as I've implemented that, I have found that I am much more effective in my conversations and I'm selling more. So my hope is that this has been helpful for you. The words that you choose to use matter. Become a wordsmith, and the way that you say the words matters as well. Appreciate you guys. Go have a great day, and we'll catch you in the next one.